having us here. It's really been an honor visiting this campus. I would like to begin by saying that, it's really an honor to be here. I would like to congratulate all of you to be part of such a wonderful campus. I mean, I've been to campuses across the country, and I should say here that the facilities that are there in this campus are world class. It would be an understatement to call this a skill development center. I would probably call it a skill excellence center. The kind of work which is happening here. The stories of different alumni that we heard today, pretty impressive. So for the concluding plenary, I would just quickly introduce our eminent set of panelists here. We have a wonderful panel, a great mix of people from different facets of skilling, people from the government, people from the private sector, an entrepreneur, and people from innovation. So it's a great set of panel. I would like to welcome you all in this panel, and we look forward to taking word of advice from all of you based on your experiences. So quickly introducing the panel, Greg here is from Canada. He graduated from the Queen's University. He's part of the Dunin Deshpande Queen's Innovation Center, and he has more than 20 years of entrepreneurship experience investing in and turning around companies in the automobile sector. Srinivas here is CEO of UTL Technologies, the education research and training organization of UTL Group, and he has 18 plus years of experience in education, training and skill development. Vimal is the founder and CEO of Juspay. He's doing great work in the sector. He has made the Beam app, which I'm sure a lot of you have started using. An innovator at heart. We welcome you, Vimal, to this panel. And finally, Prabhal, who represents the Ministry of Rural Development. He was part of the NSDA earlier, the agency responsible for the policy side of things on the skill development. So we look forward to hear your thoughts. With that, I would just like to set the tone before we get into the discussion. As the name suggests, the panel is about a roadmap for skill-ready India. I think since morning we have been hearing about the demographic dividend. We have been explained what it is about, why it's an opportunity for the country. There's a darker side to it as well, which I would like to just state here. Last 25 years, India, about 35 crore people, got added to the workforce, and only 50% of them, could be absorbed, into the workforce, which means 50% of them, could not get any jobs, or the government and the private sector together could not generate enough opportunities for 50% of the people entering the workforce. The situation is not going to be, very different, next 20-25 years. So it's a word of caution. Unless we do something very drastic, unless we are supported by the government, with various structural reforms, and also various initiatives, from the private sector into skilling, it will be very difficult to absorb the entire workforce into mainstream employment. Now, having said that, it also presents an opportunity, right? If you look at the developed world, about next 20 years, their workforce is going to reduce by 4 to 5%, and whereas in India it's going to increase by about 30-35%, which definitely presents an opportunity, for the youth in India, to capitalize on. There's enough opportunities available in India and enough opportunities outside India, because India, there's the Prime Minister's vision of making India the skill capital of the world is really because there's workforce reduction which is happening globally, and India could really fill that gap in terms of providing skilled workforce globally, thereby making India a prosperous nation, so to speak. So having said that, while the government continues to make a lot of efforts on skill development, there's a focus on giving jobs to youth. I would the panelists here, there's I think an element of entrepreneurship and innovation that each one of them would be talking about today. So I would, really like to, impress upon this audience today that it's not just jobs that, when you are entering into any skilling program, upskilling or getting your basic skilling, you should think of entrepreneurship as a mainstream, career option for you guys. It's very, even though government will continue to make efforts, and even though there'll be opportunities outside of India, entrepreneurship is the key to really bridge the gap between, people who are joining the workforce and getting them into mainstream employment. So instead of job seekers, you need to give job givers, and that is what I would probably, seek from the audience today about their experiences, and would like to understand and have, them give you some understanding and some vision into how to think like an entrepreneur, and that would probably cheer you up and gear you up for taking such an opportunity in the future. So with that said, I would move over to Greg first, and I would basically, Greg, you are an expert in innovation as well, right? You head the Dun & Deshpande Foundation, trust in the Queen's University. So I would like to first understand from you, and I would like you to give advice to the audience here on how to think about innovation when it comes to vocational skilling and non-mainstream education. How can innovation become an important input for this entire skilling initiative, and how can that lead to more entrepreneurs getting mainstream?
A lot of my career, as you know, I've spent getting involved in companies that are struggling, or they've completely failed, and generally they've failed because they've run with just momentum for too long. So they've stopped innovating. They feel they can just harvest without ever planting again. And what we tend to find when we look at companies like this and we consider whether or not we can resolve the situation, invest and turn the company around, it's the skilled people on the factory floor that are the richest source of accurate information, right? The managers who are trying to sell have a story they want to tell, but the people who are owed money have a story that they want to tell. But how many of you here are training for a vocational role, a skilled job? Are these mostly teachers or students? Both. So I admire you, the students in the room, the teachers as well, but I particularly admire the students in the room because you're going to play a really critically important role in the development of India. And the reason for that is when companies need to innovate, the most skilled and the most ambitious and the brightest people on the floor of whatever industry it is out there where the work is really being done, where the product's being created, are the people who are going to see the opportunities to innovate. And so you're right at the leading edge of where the real innovation happens. It doesn't happen in the boardroom. It doesn't happen in the sales office. It happens where the product is being produced for the customer. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity. Having a skill is a tremendous opportunity to get involved in innovation.
Great, very valid point. I think, as you said, these are the people who are closest to the shop floor, and they get to really understand, how can things be improved, how can, innovation be brought about, at the factory floor, and therefore, the to impress upon, I think, as Greg said, it's not just the responsibility of people in the boardrooms or in the R&D departments, but people at the floor, at the ground level, to understand what is their or what's their potential to contribute to innovation in any company, and which is the key to success for any corporate. Thank you so much, Greg. Also, I think in India there's very little collaboration between the industry and the various training partners and the government, so to speak, or the largest stakeholders in the ecosystem. Can you tell us more about how this collaboration has worked well in Canada? If you could, give some examples from there. And why do you think it's important for, industries to collaborate, with the various, with the skilling ecosystem, for it to really, become aspirational and to contribute and, be outcome focused?
Sure. I've spent, I would say, about a third of my career in an industrial setting, so very large factories, 2 million square foot automotive factories in Ontario, which is in Canada, and maybe a third in the construction sector. And both of those sectors rely very heavily on the skilled trades. And there's actually a shortage, a tremendous shortage of skilled workers in the Canadian economy in general, but construction and manufacturing in particular. And so the industry cooperates very closely with the training sector to try to resolve that problem. We have the same problem culturally in Canada, as I've heard a bit about in India, is that our parents want to tell us what to do, right? And in Canada, parents tell their children to become doctors and lawyers. And, below that would be engineers and skilled trades and things like that. I'm an engineer, and so is my colleague Jim here, and I see him nodding his head. So there's a tremendous shortage of skilled people and an abundance of lawyers, way too many lawyers. So industry works very closely, and when I was a CEO of a manufacturing company, I developed apprenticeship programs. And the model in Canada, the top level of qualification in skilled vocations is called a Red Seal certification. And to achieve Red Seal certification in Canada, you need about 2,000 hours of formal classroom training and about 4,000 hours in the job site working with a journeyman, it's called, another skilled tradesman, as his or her apprentice. So for that model of education to work, the receptor capacity, the ability for industry to accept these apprentices has to be pre-planned. And these programs are in very high demand, and I know a lot of people in those sectors still, and I don't think there's one of them that would say they're not always looking for skilled people to step into that model.
I hope the various stakeholders here, present inside the room and also outside, take a note of it, and give due importance to the actual on ground and hands-on training, which is an integral part of any skill development. Without which, it's very difficult, for anybody to learn real skills and hit the ground running in terms of contributing. To a company, to add to their bottom line, right? So thank you. And also, would you tell us about the importance that productivity and safety is given, in skilling in Canada, because these are two areas which I believe are have not been given enough attention in India, which are core. And which are key tenets for a great outcome in skill development program, and I believe has been focused upon and has been stressed upon internationally, as key areas. Would you throw some light on why productivity and safety are important?
Sure. Productivity is what's going to change society's level of wealth, right? We have global markets now. The amount that you can produce or contribute to producing as a worker is going to be directly tied to how much wealth you can enjoy in return. And my experience in the industrial and construction sector is productivity increases. Once again, they're talked about and they're discussed and they're planned in board meetings, but they're executed on by skilled people. And in those sectors, it's the skilled trades. In the software sector, it's coders. In other sectors, it's the skilled people that are actually producing the product that drive increases in productivity. They will point out opportunities. They'll point out areas where people aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they're the most skilled and thoughtful people that are standing closest to where the real work is being done. So once again, I admire you, but I also know from my own career that you have a tremendous burden on your shoulders as a skilled worker in the economy to drive the productivity of your country forward. The future health and wealth of your fellow citizens is sitting on your shoulders, based entirely on how well you do your job. So wealth is an output of productivity. The other thing that wealth generates is, and I see it when I travel. I've been very fortunate to have worked on construction projects and industrial projects all around the world. And one thing that really strikes me is the very different safety cultures. And I would say there's a strong correlation between societal wealth and the attention it pays to the safety of its workers. I think, unfortunately, it's sometimes seen as a luxury that only wealthy countries can provide. But I in fact believe that safety on the job is another driver of productivity and therefore prosperity, which can be used to generate more safety and healthcare and all those sorts of things. So similarly to productivity, as skilled trades or skilled vocational workers, you are the people out there where the work is being done who know how it's to be done properly. You know the standards, you know the codes, you know the procedures, probably better than the CEO knows them. And you're going to have a responsibility to follow them, to protect your own safety, but you're also going to have a probability to point out opportunities where maybe others aren't following them as closely, and you're ultimately dragging down the productivity of your company and your society, and therefore your own well-being and wealth. So you're right in ground zero of both of those things, productivity and safety.
Those are encouraging words, Greg. I think being part of the workforce, being part of the actual working force at the ground level, it's a great opportunity for you to contribute to the country, to the company, and change things for the country. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of you. With that, I would move over to Srinivas. Srinivas, you have been a training partner. You have been running various training programs, multiple sectors. So I would really like to understand. There's of course a push from the government to get more jobs, but unfortunately that's not happening. So why do you think that gap exists? Even though we are skilling people, why are we not able to place them? So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, as an organization, we've got into skill development associated with many government programs since last 2 years. A lot of experiments we have tried on ground. The fact of life is, does employment exist for all these skilled people? I think our experience is very much. For every single person that we train, and we see 5 opportunities exist, and that's the fact. So we work with close to 1,200 organizations in South, and everybody are willing to hire people. But the other challenge that we see is, after getting employment, are people joining? I think in the previous panel also that discussion has come up. What kind of jobs today we have, and the majority of them are in service sector. So service sector include something to do with sales, service, maintenance, and various, not necessarily all the jobs are in IT, right? So skill is vocation, and people don't choose to get into those areas. I think that's the crux of the problem. So where it starts about right from enrolling a candidate into program, his aspiration and in understanding what he wants to do in life. Is it right? Are we putting him to a right program? Does he values what he's doing, and does he want to pursue his career long term in the respective space? He's been a biggest challenge in the country. I think that's where the placement percentages have not been great. And I don't generalize. I think it depends on the way organizations run. I think it could be very different from DET, because the way they run programs. I think one thing I really liked in the morning is, okay, skilling, soft skills, domain skills, IT skills are one. Second is values and the entrepreneurship culture that they're building. I think if you're able to do it, I think a large portion of that can be addressed. Okay, what we are actually trying to do to address this problem is, we are in fact worked out a model called hire, train and deploy. So we bring in employers to our campus first. We say we will get you students, and we create awareness among the people and bring them to our campus and ask companies to orient in terms of what kind of jobs exist in their company, and then let them screen. Because what happens is, even post skilling within the same sector, say for instance retail sector, there are 3 companies, a guy goes through 3 but gets selected only in 1. Eventually he's got skill set. It's not skill set, but companies look beyond skill set, in terms of their fitment to the organization, the culture, the attitude, a lot of other hidden aspects which organizations look for. We thought we will get them, selected first before get through the program. We piloted about 7 to 8 batches. I think so far things are going good, and we would like to scale up that model. I think it works better is what I feel. Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful model. We work with, a lot of corporates who are trying to, switch over to a model which is more demand driven.
Yes.
Corporates coming in, telling them what their exact requirement is, and not necessarily following the NSQF curriculum, stitching in courses, stitching in, soft skills, stitching in, other general employability skills, which the corporates would like to see, rather than, following a generic program. I think that's probably something which the government is also paying attention to, as to how to make it customized, to a corporate to really impact the placement scenario, right?
Yeah, I just have a point to add. I think one interesting point you touched upon is the NSQF certification. I really don't know how many of us really understand education system, and there is a framework which Government of India has developed called National Skills Qualification Framework. I think like the Red Seal certification, of course we are not yet there. I think eventually that's the aim, to become a Red Seal certification. I think Indian education system, I think one thing you see is, though we have close to about 400 million people getting into workforce, almost 10 lakh people getting into workforce, almost getting into that, getting out of colleges or dropouts or whatever, at least every single month. And do we have so much of employment? I think that's another challenge to solve. But within that, the interesting fact is, less than 25% of our youth are today are part of a formal education system. 75% of our youth is out of the formal education system. That means they would have dropped out from higher education, they stopped at +2, they would have dropped at school level for various reasons. Maybe they don't have interest to continue in the formal setup, or a financial background, or parental pressure for them to work and carry on, right? Many issues. So what happens to these people? Assuming, you train them, and so far in India what was happening, some training institution is training people and giving them some certification. But eventually those certifications at the employment level, or an employer has never seen a value of those certificates. As long as you're good skilled, I'm willing to hire. Okay, certificate is secondary for me. I think that's been the trend so far. But moving forward, a carpenter has to take up, say, formal employment beyond our country. So how does he justify as a qualified carpenter to take up such an opportunity, right? Then the qualification becomes important. So the NSQF level, they've defined from level 1 to level 10, and level 10 is equivalent to PhD. Future of India, we're going to see PhDs, people doing plumbing attaining PhDs, and carpenters attaining PhDs. And that kind of a formal setup is created today. And industry today, does they value this certification? No. Are they going to do it in the future? Yes. It all depends on how we formally train people, upskill them, create value. I think all of us are responsible, including the students and the training providers and the government organizations, are responsible to create that value, because in a private setup, you can't enforce anybody saying, create a policy and say, I'm mandating, take these people. They will not take it. So it's more of a pull model where you create a value to him and they should say anybody who's level certified, this much of knowledge and skill set is guaranteed. Are we there today? No. I think down the line, I think that's what is our mission to go there. I think that's what we are looking at. Yeah.
Sure. For people who have, especially dropped out of the formal education system, it's very difficult, for us to expect them to understand, what are the careers they wish to pick, right? Even, people, who are doing, who are into a formal education, doing their graduation, doing their post-graduation, even, you ask most of them, even they would be confused on, what career they would want to pick, right? It's a very difficult question. So, given that, the 75% of the youth who are not been through a formal education system, have to select from a multitude of options available to them, what is your advice on, what they should be looking at when they are selecting a career for themselves?
See, at our organization, what we do is, I think this is, the main challenge today is putting right candidate into a right program. I think that takes care of a major part of the motivation part of it and the excitement in the student to learn. If you don't put right candidate into a right course, eventually you lose interest and drop out from the program because that's something he feels it's not my cup of tea. I'm not interested in it. How do you do this? So in our case, what we basically look at is eventually we have looked at programs, we looked at school dropouts, then we've looked at ITIs and diploma, and then engineering graduates and BCom, arts and science and other. So we have chosen courses which caters to these people. Like for instance, you want to do something with ITIs in electronics and computer science. We've got a program which is more related to computer hardware and networking. But the same ITIs can also pursue other careers. They are not forced to only take up this. What excites them? See, at that position, I think you really can't give a choice to a candidate. I'm very sure he'll not be in a position to choose. I think even in higher education, decisions are made on parental pressure, or a parent says, your cousin is an engineer, got a job in Infosys, you also do engineering, get a job in TCS. And that's a kind of a trend today we have, right? Many of them don't choose by choice because they're interested in that particular field. And that exactly happening in skill development. So we counsel people and give them 2-3 career options. And we also make a basic assessment in terms of, we really don't test them, but in terms of what is a minimum skill set required and aptitude and attitude needed for him to pursue that career. I think that basic assessment versus 2-3 options that we give them, and first preference is given to what he's interested, but we'll also assess whether it is an informed decision or it's just because something excites him and he's saying yes. So that part of it. And other programs also, especially when you look at college dropouts, they are entitled for many job roles. They can get into construction sector, they can get into retail sector. So we give them career options and explain them what's going to be career opportunities. You start here, 5 years down the line where you can be, 10 years down the line where you can be, the occupation map in about 2-3 sectors where they're entitled or eligible. I think that's how we help them to make an informed choice rather than saying, okay, my friend is doing retail, I will also do retail, kind of a thing, right? Okay. So this is helping. Actually initial batches when we started training, as we are not very old into skill development, we were largely into high-end courses where things were more easy for us to work on. Since it's a government funded program, one of the biggest challenges, skin is not there, the commitment is not there. So even if I don't like to continue, I'll just drop out and go, and there's no seriousness. We had seen a majority of the people are dropping out from my first 10 batches. I said, what's going wrong? And that's where we went back and spoken to every single student, parent. Involving parents in the whole decision making process is equally important. Now we have a parent has to sign off saying, I'm keeping my ward into this particular program, and I will ensure that I'll support him to ensure that he successfully completes it. That support is essentially required, and we are having a parent sign up form also. And then I think we started seeing now things are working very well for us. Yeah.
Great, thank you. With that, I would move over to Vimal. Vimal, you are a innovator and entrepreneur at heart. Why don't you tell us about your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the reason I came, a quick intro about myself. I run a company called Juspay. We are a part of most of the e-commerce apps. We do around a couple of million transactions every day, and that is run by a 3-member team in our company. And we are more than 100 people right now. We developed the Beam app. So why I'm super excited about education is, even before starting Juspay, I wanted to actually start an education company, but I didn't start. Actually, I still want to start, so that is what I'm going to talk about. So I see, as said, right, in fact, Greg mentioned about people on the ground. So from childhood, I used to be excited about all the mechanics around me, all the people, plumbers, and so they are the people who really know things. So I've always been a person who really likes to, I've always been hanging around with such people, asking questions, how does this work, how does that work, and all that, and kind of tried to be a scientist, but I ended up into entrepreneurship, right? So truly speaking, don't look at me like a businessman. I am I'm always trying to be an inventor and trying to share my inventions to people, right? So what bothered me when I wanted to start education company is, most of the things that we use around us. Take the bus that you take. I used to be super excited about when this Volvo bus came in, and none of our companies have been able to crack it, right? It used to feel like a boat. How's that suspension working? How's that? There is no noise in it. Look at the aircraft. Look at all the cameras around you. Look at the mic that I'm using. Look at the LED lights. None of these are invented by us, right? We are absolutely consumers of all this, right? And I used to wonder, why not? Why not? A lot of things that I came to know much later in my life, I could have actually known in my childhood. I used to really try to, in fact, if I want to get a motor, I have to break something, right? And resources were not available, but these days we have a lot of resources. We have pretty much with internet, computers and all that. I used to write programs when I didn't have computers, but I had to maybe after college get a computer and run it and see, right? So, used to wonder about what does it take. India has so much of brains, and we have art in our country which is exemplary, and we have, in fact, spirituality is exemplary in our company, and we do have. See, I believe. So you can say maybe the genetic composition of India is probably not good enough to be inventors, right? But if you really look at how much difference is there in between people, and in fact in between people and animals also, right? It's actually minuscule. So just by the right approach, I think we might actually come up and we might be the number one in the entire world, right? Those things have been as somebody who wants to really invent, I wanted to understand the kind of people in India. I used to wonder the stylishly how fishermen actually go and handle their boat. If I actually take it into mathematics, how will that be? In fact, that is a lot of times much more complex activity than how an accountant or a lawyer works. So it's just about mapping those, and in fact, even there, a quick, see, maybe I can get into a lot of technicality on the science behind all this. See, the difference between, let's say, even primates and humans is something called neocortex, a small part of the brain that is on top of the primitive brain. In my understanding, and maybe others also, the primitive brain, which took hundreds of millions of years to evolve, already has most of the secrets. In fact, it took 14 billion years to evolve, maybe from the Big Bang, right? Universe is extremely creative. At every moment, we are actually evolving. Everything around us is evolving, and humans are the pinnacle of innovation. And just so all of us, in fact, it doesn't need to, it's not like Einstein is so different from us, right? So, what is that we can add as a delta, even including me? I always used to seek to be a big inventor. And I started Juspay, and inside Juspay, we actually try to make everybody inventors. Whatever I learned in 10 years, can I teach a person and make them an inventor in 1 year, right? So when we developed the Beam app, we developed that in 3 weeks. And it is all done by interns in our company. So we always try to be like a bootstrap company. So to be like a crazy company who doesn't follow the trends, we always try to take less money, and we have to be extremely efficient at cost. And though we are a payments company right now, we are now creating creation tools. And in fact, getting into all other areas, and we have also started Juspay University, where whatever our learnings are, we want to share with the rest of the world. So creating new techniques. See, when I thought about what it is to be a educator, right? For me, the number one is being an inventor. if Newton figures out something called force exists, it's completely changing the mindset of millions of people, right? And everybody who can understand that can go build things. So why is all this IT revolution happening? Because of lots of inventions, because of the processor getting invented, transistor getting invented. That's why, just that, in fact, in South India, there was a genetic composition in a way, which actually enabled a lot of people to just hang on, and that's why all Infosys, TCS, everything is working. It all comes from a lot of inventions that have happened, right? So what are the next set of inventions that has to happen to make India move forward? And that is something conducive for us, right? It's something that I've always been working on, and I think we are making a journey towards it. Maybe I can even later talk about where is the world moving? Like, because I'm always seeking towards what is as an educator, right? We need to close certain doors and we have to open certain doors. We have to have the wisdom to, for example, numbers. Like numbers 1,000 years ago used to be like a scholarly subject. Only a PhD they will be thinking what is meant by numbers, right? But these days, first standard kids, or even before school, kids are learning what are numbers. So when Roman numbers used to be there, to run a Kirana store which is of a reasonably large size, you need to be a super intelligent person. These days, so many Kirana stores, everybody can. So always you have to close certain doors and simplify certain things, and you have to open possibilities. So the people who are experienced, right, they have to invent and they have to kind of have the wisdom to simplify certain and close certain doors and open certain doors for the young generation. So we are in a journey towards that. And as a small company, we are trying to invent ourselves, and whatever works for us, we want to share with the rest of the world. Yeah.
Thank you. So you said, Vimal, that you are an innovator at heart and not really a business person, right? I'm sure a lot of us who are seeking to be entrepreneurs here, they would be good at their domain skills, right? But there's always this dilemma that whether I'll be able to become an entrepreneur or not. What does it need to become an entrepreneur? It's a complete mindset change. So what is your advice? I mean, how easy or difficult is it for somebody to start a business in India?
Yeah, sure. So see, about a business, right? I used to look at all the incubators. When you go, if you know about what are incubators, when you want to start a company, lots of I think events happen and all that. But when you go, how to raise money, those are the things which are discussed, which in my opinion is the least of the concern. Like for me, an entrepreneur is going outside the norm, and an inventor is also an entrepreneur. There are inventions, everything. In fact, it doesn't need to be a business. When I look at entrepreneurship, it is more than being a business. You take a problem around you and you solve it. You are an entrepreneur. You do it in a different way. It's about value creation. As a single person in your life, how much value that you create. And it's completely up to you. You can be creating 10x, 100x, 1000x more value, right? And that is what I call as entrepreneurship. There are, if you look at, if you are into technology, right, you look at the open source movement. Like look at something like Linux, you might have heard about, right? Like one single person creates so much value. He's an entrepreneur. He doesn't maybe get money out of it, but he has, if you maybe believe in karma, he gets a lot of karma. Like maybe that's your money. So I would say that you don't need to focus on business, etc. You just become a value creator. And to be a supreme value creator, you have to align with what is the meaning, what is your composition, what are you meant to do, right? And you have to just go do it. So that is not easy, as I say. It's a constant process. But like be brave, bold, and just I would say see, that's where the wise people come in, right? Like I always see like the current generation, lots of things that you do, right? Put in some other domain could be more valuable, right? That's where a community could help you out. It doesn't need to be a business, is what I'm saying. There is internet. You can go, and if you like to do something, if you like to do art, go do art. If you want to make your motorcycle different and better, go do it, right? So that you should just go do it, and everything, the world will help you out. So I think it's about, don't worry about going the standard track, etc. So See, that's what I feel like. Like when I'm just traveling to Hubli, the first time I'm going to the North Karnataka, and like, oh yeah, so many people everywhere, and like there is infrastructure also available. It's not like only if you're in Bangalore, in the most best places you get things. With the internet, you get everything. Even I learned everything from internet. I look at everything happening around the world. It's not like, and you also have all those in your hands, right? And yeah, that's how I would put it.
Very interesting perspective. I think you probably put all the salespeople in the world, including Steve Jobs, redundant. So very interesting perspective. Thank you. Also, another thing which is really important. If you look at the entire workforce today, only about 10% would have gone through some sort of a skilling. What role do you think technology can play? Being a hardcore technology person, what role can technology play in spreading the skill education to the most interior parts of the country, to people who are not fortunate enough to join a education institution like Deshpande Education Trust? What do you think technology can do?
Absolutely. Like internet is a great innovation, right? Internet is going to create a, let's say, combined brain of the world, they say. Initially, it is going to be like your television. It's going to be a bit one way. Like people are going to take learn. In fact, internet is, I think, all the 4G is spreading everywhere, and there is all online courses available. And we also, just like BMAP, we made an app for Ekstep, run by Nandan, and like they are all focused towards how to provide all the textbook knowledge, everything in a digital form. So that's absolutely going to happen. So after it happens also, like after people learn, see, talking about technology, right? Like when we look at technology, it's like I used to see, like last 10 years, people used to, like there used to be this whole phenomenon of computer science versus the core or the mechanical, and people used to say like, if you take electronics, you are in both worlds, etc. So I want to clarify where first technology is going, right? See, the whole thing, the trend, as a person with maybe a little bit of experience, I should say this, right? So where is the world moving? The world is moving towards miniaturization. Okay, so if you take a glass of water, right? The number of atoms in a glass of water is more than the number of glasses of water you can take from all the oceans put together, all the seas. So a single glass of water has so much variety and so much, and already a processor or a transistor is running at atomic scale. So just in a small piece of material, so much of possibility is there, right? So that is the reason why everything is everything is going towards software. And what are we doing with this material, right? So we are in fact building cities inside that material. That is what is programming and technology is all about. So just like we have been building cities at some point of time, maybe few thousands of years ago, like there were not these kind of complexities were not there. Now what's really happening is we are doing that at a miniaturized scale. That's why your pen drives are getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, processing is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and programming is getting, so you now see the evolution of architecture. Like few thousands of years ago, how slowly architecture, how to make buildings, etc. evolved. When mechanical engineering came in, maybe 100, 200 years it evolved. And then maybe during industrial revolution it evolved. When electronics came in, maybe few decades. When computer science came in, it's just every year things are evolving, right? So in fact we are going, and our biology, body is also very much like that. So if you really look at the cells, each cell is like a big factory, right? Just like a computer or your cell phone, which is actually like almost a city in a dot, right? So what's gonna happen is the material around us is gonna get programmed and programmed and programmed. Now if you look at some of the luxury cars, there are like, they say 24 or 30 processors are running, taking care of everything around, right? So your buildings will be programmed, there will be internet of, like how manufacturing changed, everything around us is gonna change, okay, with technology. And in fact, I don't know whether to just term it as IT in the traditional way, right? Everything that you do, even if you're doing something mechanical, it will be that plus programming. If you're doing something in medical sciences, it will be that plus programming. Programming is nothing but the art of making machines work to what you want. And as I said, right, like, so it's, you might have been hearing about like this thing called artificial intelligence and all this. There is nothing like artificial intelligence in my opinion. It's about intelligence only. The universe only has intelligence. And we are gonna just extend ourselves only with technology. It's not like you see all these movies in the West where they talk about like like robots coming and taking us over. It will be probably some humans controlling those robots only. So basically, see, what's really going to happen is you are going to, it's not about AI, it is IA, it is intelligence augmentation. So you are going to actually upskill yourself with more and more interesting ways of doing technology. You might do programming in new formats, etc., etc. And I would say that be very open to technology. So people like us are trying to see how to make technology more human. Technology shouldn't become alien and like machine-like. How to make it more human and connect it with humans, right? So it's gonna happen, and everybody is going to get into technology. It's going to completely revolutionize things.
Great. Thank you so much for the word of advice. With that, I would move over to Prabhal. Can I just... Prabhal, you have been at the helm of things, at the policy level, and there's a lot of expectations from the government in terms of, not only providing opportunities to skill, but also, to provide opportunities to work, right? And opportunities to become an entrepreneur, right? There are various schemes, which are run by the government, in buckets, of course, where, one bucket is not talking to the other bucket. So there's very little integration between the various ministries, the various schemes. So one, what are the things that government is doing to make sure that, the system works? It works as a machinery, and, there's one single output which is coming out of the factory, and not, multiple different production lines running without, talking to each other. So your thoughts, I mean, what are you doing at that level to make sure, it becomes more effective?
I'm doing very little, and please don't me hold responsible for that big task. But thanks, those are really serious issues, and I have my, as a government and as a policy maker, we need to be conversant about things. If things are happening here, things are happening there, we should club it together. Personally, I don't think in India we should do that way, because all the innovation, all the uniqueness happens because we are not imparting anything. See what we have done with education. Great, I'm not very sure. Because we have told them this is what to read, this is what to be taught, this is how it should be done, and see how we are going ahead. Now we are talking about unlearning in that way. So I think we should keep that a bit open, but at the same time, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship is trying to converge a lot. National Skill Qualification Framework, which my fellow panelist mentioned about, talks about every learning outcomes kind of coming in one collaboration and then falling in a particular area. But again, personally, having worked in that setup for more than 3 years, I'm not very convinced about how a qualification framework will work in India, because I have my own challenges, because it's a country where things are very, very unique. A lot of time I say that we're accidentally together, but this is a great thing to go ahead. I'm very, for the last 7-8 years, what I've spent in skill development, working with them, I'm personally inspired by all of you guys, because this is where you make change happen. And please don't wait for things to happen. You're very, very lucky to have this facility around you where you can really get yourself innovative and do certain things. But please don't wait. People will keep doing it. Government's program will keep happening, keep innovating. But just if you change the word on, I am an individual, no matter whatever is happening with skill development, job roles and aspiration and all, I can find one job for me. And if we take that approach, and even if we really want to do jobs, see this around, everything, whatever is here, is basically done by a skilled person, from the fan, mic, everything else. It's not done by academic scholars. So that's the power of skilling, what we need to kind of believe in. The program currently, what we are trying to engage at Ministry of Rural Development, you are aware of program called Housing for All, which is promising houses to rural poor in the country, and we are planning to build more than 20 million houses in India by 2022. So the challenge, what we are experimenting is, everybody believes and says that what are the outcomes of skilling, and will that be really good? But my current experiment is based on the belief of you guys. Basically what we're doing is, we are saying that those people can be skilled during the construction of house itself. So I would like to call it world's unique experiment in education and training, where the actual product would be delivered by the end of training. So that's the kind of belief which I'm putting in you guys' hand. So a mechanical engineer or robotic engineer takes, or a medical doctor takes 10, 15 years to actually deliver the thing which they are trained for. What we are trying to go for, the belief is you'd be able to do it in that period itself. So, and see the challenges and different innovations. See what the power you have. I can't do 4 MBAs and come back and get back and settle down something. You can do 4 different trades, from electronics to fitter to CNC. As many things you want to do, you can do it. So these are the real potential what you have. Definitely at government side, we're trying to bring more and more possibilities. We were not lucky enough to get something like the Pandey Foundation support and the kind of environment which you have. But if you finally believe in yourself that you can make change happen, you don't have to wait for economic slowdown or upwards. You can do something which is going to help the community at large. If each one of you start doing that, because one of the difficulty what we face at the government level is, we think that we know a lot, and then you guys agree also. So that's the bigger problem. You have to start disagreeing to things. When we design any policy, and those policies are designed in a lot of isolation, and these things happen. So you have to say how to make this thing right. If I say this is table, you have to say this is not table. There's something else. So come and disagree with policies. Come and demonstrate what you can do. And in terms of a lot of time the comparison happen between the education and skilling. Do you really want to go to IIM and then, I was hearing some example, and sell Coca-Cola in a better way? I would personally not want to do it. I don't want to come in on a particular type of job. But what you can do is you can create certain innovation there. You can create a fan which will have less electricity here, and that can be used by some 2-3 household also. So the power which I don't have, I have to create policy which works better and then impact people. But you can impact 2-3 people, 20, 30, 200, 30, 300 every day from your life. So from government side, we're trying to innovate. We have this scheme called Housing for All, and other scheme which we are trying to converse to Ministry of Skills and Entrepreneurship also. But you also try to find out. I would agree with my fellow panelists that a lot of things are happening. All the policies, schemes, the development, the convergence is available on website. So you read about it, and if you disagree, go to your local administrator, go to the block development officer, go to the district collector, go to the capital and say that, I don't agree with that. So as soon you start saying that, the trend which has happened for 100 of years is, we feel that this is what has to be done, and it comes to you and you have to do it, and it fails, it will start different way. So please believe in yourself and then start doing things, so that government will start doing better way. Because I am sure, let me tell you very clearly, there are not 100 people sitting in Delhi or Bangalore, anywhere, who knows everything. So basically, whatever they know less than you. Somebody who is designing entrepreneurship and skill development policy would not have enough knowledge about what's happening here. So it's a very, very risky affair, and that's already happening. Unfortunately, this is how it's been going on. But you can change it. You can change it, and I heard one time Naveen Jaji was telling that we will create so much of noise here that people will start coming here and seeing this happen. So you are already doing it. You got enough support from here, and you are the real change maker. You have to go and inspire other to do this, to tell them that you're lucky that you didn't do good in education. Because if you had done good in education, you would have gone for life. After 50 years, you would have come to know kya kiya, kuch samajh mein nahi aaya. So it's better that you're here. You want to be electrician today, you want to be welder tomorrow, you can do that. None of us can do it here, let me tell you. So this is the power of it. So and my personal, and I'm being very inspired by being here, but my personal motivation is I try to go and collect feedback from the grassroots level so that I work little bit better. But you start making that noise, go and tell that this is not right to whoever you feel, so that policies start getting, better, and this will finally help each of you.
Thank you so much for the motivational words. I have to say that, you took away a lot of what I had to say towards the end, but that's okay. So in the end, yeah, questions from the audience, please.
It's been a fascinating conversation. One observation, two points. The thing that's really struck me, all you have to do is drive down a road in India. There's lots of entrepreneurial spirit, I think. There's so many stores and packs. One of the original sources of markets. So you've known how to do this for a very long time. I think that the catalyst will be the skills development and recognizing opportunities, and then shifting to a more global focus, which, it's really impressive to see what you're doing. One thing a piece of advice from, say, a North American perspective, you can focus on skills development, but also keep in mind you need to instill a capacity and an agility, because sectors that are dominant will shift. Where things get done will shift. Greg can provide a lot more insight than I can. But if you take a look at redistribution of where manufacturing occurs, and so, of course, there's been a shift to a low labor cost parts of the world. And that's been very disruptive in North American society. And so it's sort of the opposite side of the coin. So I think you need to make sure that you don't entrench training in specific sectors. People need to have skills, but they need to also understand how and why things work, so that they can adapt. Adaptability, I think, will be very important.
Thanks for that. So I just had a question, because in India we are a group of different language communities. So that is a major challenge as a training provider that we find. So because all the government policies, education programs that are driven from Delhi, they're basically either in English or Hindi. But at grassroots level, the challenge that we are facing currently is, because we are training a lot of students, but by end of the training program, they know the content, but when it comes to application of that content, when it comes to assessment part, so that's where the language barrier, because we train them in the Indian languages, whereas when it comes to application, so it's not there in their languages, and that is a major barrier that the trainees are facing. So I was just wondering how government or the community together can help break this barrier.
I think very important concern. At present, if you look at it from an NSDC perspective, they already have a multilingual content. Of course, whether it is in Kannada for some job roles, because they have identified 1,500 job roles, and about 250 of them are part of a particular program, and it's large scale. If you look at it down the line, I think you will see at least in 15 different languages content is being created, at least largely spoken, whatever prominently spoken across the country, content will be created. That's the way to go about it. In fact, literally I have to sit with people for a lower trade skills, level 3, level 2 kind of programs. English is not really important, right? That's where you have to first train them so they understand it well. And we got assessments done in the local language. It's must, and I'm sure it'll happen in a year or so. I think you will find content available in the regional language. Sure.
I would also respond. Just very quickly, we don't have time, but I think use this thing as innovation. Basically, सीख लेते हैं English, क्या दिक्कत है? If you start engaging your trainer in translating that English content to the local language content, that's the only time when trainer will connect with the content. Because I can challenge 95% trainer doesn't, they don't connect with the content. It's just that देखा और कर दिया. So use this as an opportunity to convert that translation, because and let me tell you guys, these are the things where everybody will come. They won't see your product. They say, how good you communicate. They will always say that, and I think we can do that. That's not too much of tough task. Let's communicate, start properly, and then let's because if you start communicating, they don't have the real confidence. You know, we are trained confident people. We know how to sit good on stage, you know, how to talk properly. But inner, we don't have that much of confidence as much you have, because as much challenges you face, as much confidence comes in. So just learn good communication skill, and then your confidence will start with the communication skill. Everybody will go down. So that's the finally, and you can do that. You can innovate with that.
Great. Thank you so much to all the panelists for